Dear students of class 10A and 10B, welcome to my history and civics class. Today's points: ill treatment of Indian soldiers, General Service Enlistment Act, bleak prospects of promotion, deprivation of allowances, larger proportion of Indians in the British Army. First point: ill treatment of Indian soldiers. Ill treatment of Indian soldiers. You know, the British from the very beginning had been depriving the Indian soldiers from enjoying their, minimum rights. It had been exercising since all the sepoys working in the British Army were natives. The British sepoys had many facilities. They always enjoyed their rights. Various facilities, allowances were providing for them, but not for the Indian sepoys. Besides, Indian sepoys were as efficient as the British counterparts, but still they had no regards. They were ill-treated by the Britishers. In spite of being efficient and skillful sepoys, they were badly housed, ill-fed, and poorly paid. British military authorities forbade the sepoys from wearing caste or secretariat marks, beards, or turbans. On the contrary, they showed disregard for the sentiments of the sepoys. Second point, General Service Enlistment Act. The British Parliament passed an act in order to force Indian sepoys to go to abroad for an war against the British. Earlier there was a system. Indian sepoys would decide whether they would go to abroad for any war for the Britishers. It was not mandatory. That's why there was a system of providing them extra allowances. For going to abroad, they were paid extra allowances. But the British Parliament passed an act. Under the terms of the act, it was decided that all Indian sepoys were supposed to go to abroad for fighting against against the enemies of the British, and no extra allowances would be paid to them. So the Indian sepoys were deprived of their rights once again. The facilities which were given to them earlier, the British deprived them. Not only that, it was declared compulsory to go to abroad under the General Service Enlistment Act of the British Parliament. Next point, bleak prospects of promotion. Bleak prospects of promotion. The British always gave the higher posts to only the British soldiers but not Indian Sipahis. Even Indian soldiers formerly occupying high position in the armies of native princes could not rise above the rank of a Subedar. The future of the Indian soldiers was bleak without chances of promotions. They never expected that they would be promoted to higher ranks. Why? Because they were native. They were natives. And the European soldiers, the British soldiers, were promoted to higher ranks easily since they belonged to England. Next point, deprivation of allowances. The extension of British dominion in India adversely affected the service conditions of the Sipahis. They were required to serve in areas away from their homes without extra payment and additional bhatta which was given to them earlier, as I mentioned earlier. Besides, the Post Office Act of 1854 withdrew the privilege of free postage enjoyed by the Indian Sipahis. How funny. Earlier they were provided with free postage facilities, but after a few days later the British withdrew that system. But that system was kept for the British soldiers. They were provided with free postage and enjoyed it, but not Indian Sipahis. Next point, larger proportion of Indians in the British Army, larger proportion of Indians in the British Army. The number of British troops in their army were less than Indian troops. A large number of Indian soldiers were recruited in the British Army than the British soldiers. It was due to an effort of Lord Dalhousie. The British decided to recruit British soldiers in the army, large in numbers. But it did not come about. Why? Because there was something wrong with that system, the British realized at last. The British felt that that system should not be realized, and hence it did not come through. The British actually wanted to drain Indian wealth to their country. Since the recruitment of the British soldiers would cost high amount of expenditure, that's why far from doing it, the British followed the same system of recruitment, large in numbers from the Indians. So, a large number of Indian Sipahis were there who took its advantages during the time when the Sipahi Mutiny of 1857 was taken place. A large number of Indian Sipahis, they raised their voice against the British. They raised their weapons against the British and took part in the war. Another thing is that the British decided to harm the sentiments of the Indian Sipahis by hook or by crook. Although they knew that Indian Sipahis needed jobs, they would never resign in spite of being insulted by them. Why? Because of their poverty, because of the miserable condition of that country. That's why the British deliberately insulted Indian Sipahis. And the British soldiers, they were not insulted because they belong to British blood, British nation. That's why they had sympathy for their motherland, for the people of their motherland, but not sympathy for the native people, native soldiers of India. But they were ruled by them. This injustice done to them created resentment among the Indian Sipahis. The people of India, they felt the miserable conditions of the Indian Sipahis. That's why they also decided to organize a revolt against the British. What the British not expected from the Indians. That's why it was the first war against the British. The Indians started. The British felt something was wrong in the system of administration, should be immediately rectified. As soon as the revolt of 1857 was suppressed, as soon as the British, the British stopped the mouths of Indian Sipahis, as soon as the British, felt the inconveniences, felt that it was not the right way, it was not the right process. The Indian Sipahis and Indian people would be forcefully ruled by them. So, something wrong is there which should be immediately rectified. Hence, the British Parliament passed an act. Under that act, the British East India Company's rule was ended and the rule of British Queen Victoria started in our country. Under the Queen's proclamation, it was decided that Indians would be treated equally. There would be no unequal treatment for the Indians, and minimum requirement for their minimum requirement of the Indians would be fulfilled as much as possible. And the British would try to satisfy the needs and expectations of the Indian people. After the suppression of the Sipahi Mutiny or War of Independence, under the proclamation of Queen Victoria, it was decided to follow. After that, the British government passed a number of policies favored the Indian people. These policies brought remarkable changes in the field of development, in the field of growth, and ultimately India for few years witnessed a very peaceful atmosphere. Indian people enjoyed during the reign of Queen Victoria, because of the good policies for the Indian people and all-round development of the country. Up to this, my dear students, and before finishing today's teaching, I would like to inform you some homework I shall give you. You must prepare your homework in your homework copies and submit it to me. Those who are not preparing homework, who are not making homeworks, I am warning them, please don't practice it. The homeworks which are given to you, you must make your homework in your homework copies and submit it to us for correction. Thank you.